466. That's the number of horsepower this car reached before barfing a hot mess of oil and aluminum all over the dyno. Hi, me again. I figured I'd just show you the big boom and tell you what power it made right away. Those are probably what you came here for, and we both got things to do. Now, I do have a ton of different video angles of all this, along with some juicy data logs and dyno graphs, so consider sticking around for all that. Since I built the car, it's been running and driving with very little issues. I've had it out and about for a while, and I've been having a good time with it. Too good, some might even say. Now, when I first made the video about this build, I had this to say. I don't give a fuck about this engine. Not only do I not give a shit if it blows up, I honestly look forward to it. And that hasn't changed. So after having some fun in the car, I was ready to go full send. And full send I did. This engine has only been running on maybe 14 pounds of boost up to this point, and yeah, it was quick. But my goal with this build was to play with a K24, plain and simple. And that includes pushing it to the limit and beyond. Especially beyond. I like doing things myself. I like building, I like wiring, and I like tuning. And granted, most tuners could probably do a better job than me, but that's not the point. I'm not looking for big numbers or anything, I'm just looking to have a good time. And I did end up finding a few shops that would let me rent dyno time, though one in particular stuck out to me. Godspeed Dyno in Port Matilda, Pennsylvania. Bart, the fellow who runs the dyno, operates on a BYOT policy, that is, bring your own tuner. And this is perfect for me, because I pretend to be my own tuner all the time. I've been doing it for years. When the car exploded, I was just like, hey Bart, sorry for making a mess on your dyno. And he just goes, don't worry about it. That was the coolest looking failure this dyno's ever seen. I actually started by bringing my LS swapped RX-8 down. I've never been on a dyno before, never even had one of my cars on one, and the LS is a well-known platform that is very well documented, so I figured it'd be a good car to learn on. And indeed it was. I went there with a 340 horsepower car, left with 370, and gained a ton of knowledge in the process. My next step was to bring this animal down, with the singular goal to shoot for the moon or die trying. And it's pretty clear which of those two things happened. In other words, all parties involved knew that grenading the engine was a very real possibility. It's the reason I got so many good video angles of it. Now if you're new here, this is indeed a Hand to K-swapped Subaru. And this isn't just a bare K24A2, it's got some other goodies on it, such as an eBay GT35 knockoff, an air-water intercooler, and 2150 injectors squirting out that sweet, sweet E85. The engine itself, though, bone stock. See the link in the description if you want a full parts list, and check out the other videos I made about the car if you're into that kind of thing. This was also a pretty chilly day, and temps in the dyno room were around 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Haha, boost weather! Haha, boost weather. Now with that said, we strapped the car down, fired it up, and did our first run to get a baseline. The first run came in at 335 horsepower and 272 foot-pounds of torque. And when people ask me how much power the car made, I always said that I didn't know and that it was probably somewhere between 300 and 350, so it's good to know the old butt dyno is still calibrated right. Now, this run peaked at 13.8 psi with a nice cool intake air temp of 61 degrees Fahrenheit. The AFRs were a bit lean for my liking in the beginning there, but we cleaned those up real fast. Overall, that's a nice looking graph. Look at how flat that torque curve is. You love to see it. Now, the tune I used for this first run is the one I was driving around on. I had both VTEC and variable cam timing turned on, both tuned to about how they came from the factory. And for the remainder of the runs, I disabled both of these functions. I was going to be stepping the boost up, and I didn't want any additional variables to get in the way. After we hit a good boost level, I would turn them on and tune them in. It was actually pretty interesting to see how much of a difference these two functions actually made. Now, here's a poll that we did right after the first one, with the only changes being that we turned off VTEC and variable cam timing. The torque came on later, probably because there was no variable cam timing, and it didn't carry out to redline, probably because there was no VTEC. Overall, we made less peak power. Now this is the kind of stuff that gets me going. I'm a big fan of data. Being able to experiment and see real, quantifiable results is just really cool. The remainder of the runs were us essentially dialing in boost and timing. In total, we did 14 runs. Run number 13 was, of course, the best run we had done up to that point. You always hear this phrase, "It was running perfect right before it blew up." And yeah, that was my experience as well. Just listen for yourself. That run, we made 445 horsepower and 375 foot-pounds of torque. Again, with no VTEC or VTC. And after this run, I decided to give her a bit more boost, just like we'd been doing before. I was well aware that we were asking for a lot from this engine, but you can't help but be curious as to how much something like this will take. And we quickly found out. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got into this situation. 466 horsepower, 398 foot-pounds of torques. And if not for that minor issue where the entire engine exploded, it would have been perfect. Who am I kidding? I would have kept turning it up anyway. But, dare I say, an engine failure has never looked so beautiful. That was an experience, one that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. The feeling of the car building boost, making power, and the heat of that giant fireball just on the other side of the glass was awesome. In the true spirit of the word awesome, as in it was awe-inspiring, it made me awe. So what happened? Why'd it pop? I don't think this was a matter of there being a bad tune or it leaning out or anything like that. We have good data for the entire run. The AFRs held steady throughout the whole run, fuel pressure was right where it should have been, and injector duty cycle was only at 63%, so it didn't seem to lean out. Not only that, I had headphones on that I used to audibly listen for knock. Throughout all of our runs, I didn't hear any knock whatsoever, and given that we were running relatively conservative timing on E85, that makes sense. What probably happened was we were just asking too much of the factory internals, which is honestly more boring than knocking or leaning out, but I'll take what I can get. And it's to be expected, really. I probably should have stopped increasing boost much earlier, even before that 445 horsepower run. We'd been riding that ragged edge for a few runs at that point. I was hoping to reach the limits of the eBay Turbo before reaching the limits of the engine, and obviously things didn't go that way, but I don't regret trying. This is the kind of stuff that I enjoy. What I do regret is not popping it while VTEC was engaged, only because it would have produced a significantly cooler graph. Though if VTEC was on, it probably would have given up a lot earlier. Now I can hear some of you in the back saying something like, well, these engines can make more power than that and survive. And yeah, you're probably right. But keep a few things in mind. Number one, this car was built with all eBay parts. See the first video about that. Number two, I am not a tuner. I'm just a guy that likes building and breaking shit. Especially breaking shit. Number three, this car is still all-wheel drive. Now I've always heard that all-wheel drive drivetrain losses are anecdotally around 20-25%, so you can imagine that this thing was actually cranking out more power than we were measuring with the dyno. But I'll let you make your own assumptions from here. Now I've blown up a number of engines, all for the same reason, running unreasonable amounts of power on very stock internals. But this is clearly the one that takes the cake for being the most spectacular.
There's parts.
Well, I can't tell if that's a piece of the block that's sitting over here or not.
Oh, that's a rod. I think that's a rod, isn't it? That's a yep. That's
Yes,
that's
it is.
That's rod.
That's a rod. So much. I think there's part of a ring.
Think it'll start?
Yeah, totally.
I'll be dang.
No way.
It's that Honda power.
So, with that, the old Handaroo is down, but not out. And as for next steps, well, I haven't decided yet. And if I'm being honest, this engine blowing up is a minor bump in the road. They're pretty cheap and easy to source. So my instinct is to just buy another K24, put some forged internals in it, and then rinse, lather, repeat. Which is all well and good, but the bigger issue at hand has been getting my hands on a stronger transmission. It's been that way since the beginning of the build. This car still runs the factory trans, the one that came with the 2.5 RS. The Subaru 5-speeds aren't exactly known for being strong, and this one's got 220,000 miles on it. I genuinely thought the trans would go first, considering how I beat the ever-loving piss out of it. The ideal trans to swap to would be an STI 6-speed, but they're damn expensive. You're looking at around $3,500 for a decent used one. And I have a hard time stomaching that price when I literally just paid that same amount for a brand spanking new T56 Magnum for my LS swapped RX-8. I'm also a serial project hopper. I'll start a project, maybe get it to a good stopping point, and then move on to another. I have a hard time revisiting projects because I kind of feel like, been there, done that. It's just how I'm wired, I guess. Now that being said, the K-Swap was a very cool setup. I had a great time building and driving the car, and I really liked people's reactions to the gaudy, in-your-face engine sticking out of the hood. I also don't really feel like I've fully explored what this engine has to offer, so I'm still leaning towards going with another K, but building it properly this time. So if you have any suggestions, let me know down below. As I'm sure you know from my other videos, I'm open to anything. The only limiting factor is usually cost of parts, so keep that in mind. Alright, that's all I got for now. And once the engine's out, I'll probably post some pictures of the carnage, so be sure to follow my socials for that. Also, consider subscribing if you like this kind of thing, and like the video to encourage more of my destructive antics. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go scoop an engine out of my car. Bye for now.